Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining this Eurovent expert webinar. I am Francesco Scuderi, Deputy Secretary General of Eurovent, and I'm going to moderate our today's webinar. Our speakers, our panelists will elaborate on the upcoming eco-design and energy labeling requirements for refrigerating appliances with a direct sales function. They will provide the industry point of view, but they will also listen to your question and answer them. I trust that you will find useful this webinar and enjoy. Before we start, let's go through a set of practical information. So attendees are allowed to join in listen-only mode, so no oral intervention and no camera. If you want to raise a question, please use the question field by navigating with the orange button in the control panel. And your questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. For your information, this webinar will be recorded and then shared afterwards within the Eurovent social channels. Before I introduce our parterre de roi, our speakers, I want to also, please allow me to provide with a personal message, because I want to thank the Eurovent staff for organizing this webinar, and especially our public relations manager, Andrea Gasparova. Andrea did a tremendous job, and she deserves all our gratitude. So now let's start. The speakers, they are all members of the Eurovent product group commercial refrigeration equipment, product group that has been extremely active in the last years, accompanying the Ecodesign and Energy Labelling regulations and also drafting the Eurovent recommendation 14-6, which will be presented later on. So we have Pierluigi Schiesaro from Arneg, Francesco Mastrapasqua from Epta, Ines Muehlhaus from Carrier, Daniel Antoñanzas from EXKAL, Felix Van Eyken, Secretary General of Eurovent, and myself. This is our roadmap. So we will have the welcome remarks, then we will elaborate on the eco-design and energy labeling requirements. We will elaborate on reference models and extrapolation rules, market surveillance and incomplete deliveries, and at the end we will have a Q&A session. So Pierluigi Schiesaro will provide us with his welcome remarks in his capacity of chairman of Eurovent Product Group Commercial Refrigeration Equipment, and Pierluigi is also Research and Development Director at Arneg. So Pierluigi, thanks for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesco, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As chairman of this Eurovent Product Group Commercial Refrigerating Equipment, I have the pleasure to open the presentation session. So here below you see which are the products in the scope of Ecodesign and Energy Labeling regulation for refrigerated appliances with direct sale function. We see supermarket remote cabinets, supermarket plug-in cabinets, commercial beverage coolers, refrigerated vending machines, ice cream freezer, and the gelato scooping cabinets. How did we come to the requirements? The regulatory process period was very, very long, starting in 2005, so 14 years ago. And since the beginning and during all this long period, this product group has always actively supported the European Commission and his consultants, and during the preparatory study. That was started with product environmental impact analysis and have concluded with the proposed energy saving targets. Energy saving because the main impact for such product is given by the energy consumption during the using phase. Finally, at the end of 2019, on 5 of December, the two regulations were published. So we had more or less 1 year of time to align our products to these regulations that will come into effect on 1st of March of this year. Eurovent and its members deem an ambiguous interpretation of the requirement set out in this regulation of fundamental importance. Furthermore, such guidelines could be helpful as industry input for the future European Commission guidelines accompanying the regulation. That is what we aim to provide with our recommendation, and this is what you will learn today. So let's start, and please, Francesco, go forward.
Okay, Pierluigi, thanks for your welcome remarks and for your long-term commitment within our commercial refrigeration equipment. I'm now going to leave the floor to Francesco Mastrapasqua. Francesco is the Institutional Affairs Manager at Epta and is also President of the Italian Refrigeration Association, ASSOCOLD. Francesco, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Hello and welcome to everybody. The new European Ecodesign and Energy Labelling regulations for refrigerating appliances with direct sales function regulate the sale of new products, both from energy consumption and from environmental impact point of view. These two regulations are commonly referred as twin regulations because they address the same goal. They will start their application period on the same date, which is 1st March 2021, so a few days from now, but they act according to different schemes. In the next slides, we will see how eco-design measures push the market away from the worst performing products. Energy labeling measures pull the market towards more efficient products by better informing consumers. And EPREL helps the client to make informed decisions, giving an aggregate view of the products available in the market. But which products are exactly the refrigeration appliances with the direct sales function? The regulations clarify very well the scope of application and hence the products that will be labeled in the future. In the regulations, these products are generally referred to as Lot 12, which is supermarket refrigerating equipment, cabinets, both freezers and refrigerators, self-contained plug-in cabinets, beverage coolers, small ice cream freezers, gelato scooping cabinets, and refrigerated vending machines. The energy labeling and eco-design regulations establish the general rules, principles for refrigerating appliances with direct sales function. Ecodesign states minimum mandatory energy efficiency requirements for the products that will circulate in the European market and their ecological performance. The energy labeling scheme, on the other hand, will highlight the product's energy efficiency and the annual energy consumption with the energy label, with the technical documentation, and with the product information. The key parameter that determines the compliance and rates the energy performance of the product is the energy efficiency index. This index is the percent index that expresses the annual energy consumption of the product versus the market standard, or namely the standard annual energy consumption of that product category. Each model has its own index that depends on the product model and in a particular configuration, size, geometry, accessories, variants, and so on and so forth. Besides Y, the parameter Y, which is the total display area or the internal volume of the product, the other parameters you see, M, N, P, C, are parameters set in the regulation that are required to adapt the general formula to many different product types. M and N are product type parameters. You can see, please notice that vertical, open, and closed refrigerators have the same values to highlight the very different energy efficiency performance of these products. And the same applies for vertical and combined supermarket freezers, which have the same M and N parameters. Looking at the C parameter is the product temperature class segmentation parameter. In particular, 3 and 0 parameters have been introduced with an amendment proposed by Eurovent Association. Finally, P is the product plug-in or remote segmentation, which is 1 for remote cabinets and 1.1 for plug-in cabinets. For semi-plug-in cabinets, so water loop systems, the right parameter is going to be 1. So, as you can see here, the energy efficiency index decides if a product can be sold in the European market or not. In fact, all the refrigeration appliances with direct sales function must have an index below 100 on March 1st this year and below 80 just 2 years later in September 2023, except for ice cream freezers that will have to be below 80 and then below 50 in September 2023. These limits apply on products when they're placed on the European market for the first time by the manufacturer or the importer after March 1st this year. Products that do not comply with these limits will be banned, will be prohibited from the European market. However, products already in the warehouse of dealers, like they have been placed in the market by the original manufacturer before March 1st and are now in the warehouse of dealers, of course, can be also sold afterwards. As you can see here, the energy efficiency index is also used to decide the energy rating of the product. The end user can finally compare products that apparently look identical, but have very different energy and functional performances. Manufacturers, on the other hand, have now a tool to prove that their products perform better than their competitors. And globally, there is an increase in the average efficiency of the products sold in the European market. But now, let's have a closer look at the energy levels foreseen for commercial display cabinets, which will be for 3 types. The energy level for our supermarket cabinets indicates, first of all, the energy efficiency class in different colors ranging from A to G, from better to worse products. The annual energy consumption expressed in kilowatt-hour per year, and then a few additional informations on the second half and the lower part of the energy level. We have, for example, the TDA of the product, the total display area surface of the product, and the product temperature on the right side. Product which is M1, we will write -1 + 5, for example. The displayed energy consumption tells you how much electricity the product uses in kilowatt hours per year and allows you to compare different models precisely. The lower the figure, less energy it will use, so saving your money on energy bills. However, actually savings will of course depend on the use you do of the product and how much you pay for your electricity. In the initial scenario, the A class will be empty due to the extremely high efficiency limits intentionally set by the European Commission. Over time, the A class will be populated with new and better products. In B class, we may find the very best ice cream freezers now. However, different from other product categories where the energy labeling scheme is in place since many years, those who will buy a commercial display cabinet class C in 2021 should be aware that they are buying the best in its class. In future, innovation will introduce new A and B products available for purchase, pulling the market up. It is very, very important to explain very well this concept in order to give to our clients the idea of the real value of the products that we'll buy. So what happens and what changes from March 1st, 2021? If you're a manufacturer or an authorized representative or an importer in the EU, you need to make sure the energy label is clearly displayed at the point of sale, showrooms, trade fairs, and so on, and that the energy efficiency rating appears on all promotional materials, online sale platforms, commercial offers, and any other marketing document, and of course must be shipped with the product. As of March 2021, suppliers, so manufacturers once again, importers and authorized dealers in the EU, need to register their products in EPREL before placing them on the European market. EPREL is the European Product Registry for Energy Labeling. Customers, as well as market surveillance authorities and the Commission, will find all the products circulating in the European market registered in EPREL without any exception. There will be two parts in EPREL. One is confidential, where manufacturers will place their test reports of their products, for instance, and one will be the public part. The public part, everyone can access without any restriction, just necessary to register yourself as a user, and you can enter and see the information in the public part. The information in EPREL remains visible until 8 years after the product is phased out from the market. And with EPREL, the clients will have now more information than ever to compare and wisely decide which are the most efficient products for their stores. The regulations precisely state which products are in the scope and which products are out of the scope. As you can easily understand, the effectiveness of these energy measures directly depend on the coverage, and it is therefore essential that all the products sold in the European market are labeled. But are really all the refrigeration appliances for direct sales function going to be labeled? The answer is nearly yes. In fact, there are exclusions, but they are very, very limited. So you can see on the left side of the screen the exclusions from the obligation of energy labeling coming directly from the regulation. So, for example, saladettes, horizontal serve-over counters with integrated storage designed to work at chilled operating temperatures, corner cabinets, vending machines for frozen food, serve-over fish counters with flaked ice, refrigeration cabinets for the sale of live foodstuffs like living fish, shellfish, and so on. These are exclusions from labeling foreseen in the regulation. On the right part, you have the exclusions which are introduced by the Eurovent document interpretation guide. Additional exclusions introduced by Eurovent. These are backwall cabinets, provided they have the integrated refrigerated storage, fruit, vegetable, and meat cabinets using high humidification systems, curved cabinets, and carousel cabinets. So, someone may wonder, the so-called special cabinets with strong customizations for a customer, or the prototypes, or the so-called pilot projects, of which it is totally unknown if they will be repeated or not, are also subject to labeling if they are placed on the market and sold. Another question, even if I do only one of that type, the answer is yes, you need to label it. Now, let me turn the page for a moment and introduce a new concept of circular economy. Circular economy model is essential in the frame of the European Green Deal, whose final goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to become climate neutral in 2050. So circular economy is the opposite of the traditional linear model, take, use, dispose. All products and materials are very highly valued. They must be used many times in the productive cycle, reusing products, repairing, reconditioning, and recycling them, thus creating further value. The point here is to extend the product's life. This results in specific requirements regarding the availability and the maximum delivery time for the spare parts, information for repair, maintenance, and specific dismantling instructions to recover and recycle the material to prevent the disposal. Spare parts, for instance, need to be largely available for at least 8 years. Repair and maintenance information, instructions, and schemes must be available for professional repairers. Finally, specific dismantling instructions must be available to recover and recycle all materials. All these are no longer good practices, but specific requirements of the Ecodesign law and obligations for the manufacturers. Finally, the key takeaways are that from March 1st this year, there will be minimum efficiency and environmental performance requirements in Europe, and that every product will be judged for its energy efficiency that will appear every time it is presented or delivered. I give you back the line, Francesco. I thank everyone for their attention and speak to you later during the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Okay, Francesco, thanks a lot for your very complete overview, on the upcoming Ecodesign and Energy Labeling requirements, but also for having clarified some very important point, like that starting from the very beginning, the energy labeling class, the top classes will be empty, or also for having clarified that the M0 product temperature class will be included in this regulation according to the ongoing amendments to be finalized quite soon. I'm going to give the floor to Ines Muehlhaus. Ines is a member of the Eurovent product group commercial refrigeration equipment. She has always been active in our activities, and she is a manager system cabinets at Carrier. So Ines, thanks for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesco, and good afternoon to everybody. I will elaborate on the reference models and extrapolation rules. Refrigerated display cabinets are offered in a huge variety on the market, and as just have been explained, they all have to be So in order to cover this variety of models, in the recommendation, we have introduced the concept of reference model and deducted model. A reference model can be considered representative for a group of cabinets, and for this group of cabinets, the energy consumption can be deducted from the reference model. The characteristics of a cabinet can be distinguished in two groups: those that are intrinsic to the cabinet design, like the geometry, the refrigeration components, and those that are more flexible and often by customer choice, like the shelves, lighting. For this part, recommendation proposes a standard configuration that highest energy efficiency index for this kind of cabinet, and is intended to be used for the reference model, but also to ease comparison between cabinets and to standardize the entry into extrapolation method. In total, 18 different standard configurations have been defined, 6 each for remote, for integral, and for semi-plug-in. I will now explain 3 different examples of this standard configuration. First is for remote vertical or semi-vertical open refrigerator. For all of this, in common is that the reference length is always 2.50 meters. Here the number of shelves rows is declared depending on the front opening height, so around 30, each 30 millimeter one shelf. If the cabinet is available with under-shelf lighting, of course, the reference model has also been tested and the data provided with under-shelf lighting. So the next page shows an example of an integral, vertical or semi-vertical closed supermarket freezer, which follows the same approach and logic. I just want to highlight here the fact that as this is a freezer, for the declaration of the energy consumption, all heaters that are needed for a safe and reliable operation under the ISO rating conditions have, of course, to be turned on in this test. So just for completeness, another example for a semi-plug-in horizontal supermarket freezer, which follows the same concept. Length is 2.50 meters, and all lighting that can be is available as an option for this cabinet has to be also in this reference cabinet. This concludes the part of configuration. When we look at the characteristics that are intrinsic to design, the Eurovent recommendation provides a set of extrapolation rules for the energy consumption of cabinets that deviate from the reference model in length, height, or depth. These extrapolation rules are based on the statistic evaluation that was used to determine the formulas for the standard annual energy consumption that were explained before and that are part of the regulation. First, I will explain the rules for the remote cabinet and then explain the differences for the integral and semi-plug-in. So, most common for remote cabinets is that they are available in different lengths. The assumption is that for the same cabinet in the same temperature class that just deviates in the length, the energy efficiency of the 2.50 meters cabinet can be assumed equal to the other length of this cabinet. For the front opening height, if the cabinet is smaller by about 10%, it can be assumed that if the cabinet is of the same temperature class, basic geometry stays the same, so it has this. So that mainly just air ducts are shortened in length. It can also be assumed that the EI for the stays the same as for the reference cabinet, which is the higher cabinet. The rules for the change of depth explains this concept a little bit better. So here you can see in the picture, the red areas are the ones that cannot be reduced in depth. So the air discharge and air return grid geometry is just allowed to shorten the cabinet in what is marked green on the left picture. And if, of course, this just applies if the cabinet is just reduced in depth by not more than 30%, it can be assumed that the energy consumption of the cabinet stays the same. So it's not the EEI, it's really the energy consumption of the cabinet. This is a conservative approach, but normally it can be assumed that the highest impact on the energy consumption comes from the front opening, which stays the same in this example. For the sake of completeness, here as also mentioned, the same rules apply also for semi-vertical cabinets. So the red area is not allowed to be changed, that you see in the picture in the middle. Different rules for the extrapolation of lengths for integral and semi-plug-in cabinets. Here, the length of the cabinet can only be extrapolated if the length consists of a number of identical refrigeration circuits that is modular and proportional to the cabinet length. What this means is explained in the picture on the right-hand side. If you take the reference model of 2.50 m that has 2 refrigeration circuits, from this cabinet, the length 1.25 m with one of this identical refrigeration circuit can be extrapolated, and also the length 3.75 with 3 of this refrigeration circuits. If these conditions are fulfilled, the same rules for the extrapolation of the length can be applied as for the remote cabinet. Just for the sake of completeness, here also mentioned the rules for front opening height and depths, which are the same as for the remote cabinet, so I will just briefly show them here. So this concludes this part of the session. Thank you for your attention, and I hand back to Francesco Scuderi.
Okay, Ines, thanks a lot for clarifying what are the extrapolation rules according to the Eurovent recommendation, and also for stressing that within the recommendation we have defined 18 different reference models. So my suggestion is for those interested to download our freely available recommendation so that you can have a clear overview and understanding of the discussed and agreed reference models. So now we are going to move to market surveillance and incomplete deliveries. I'm going to hand over to Daniel Antoñanzas. Daniel is a general manager at EXKAL, and they will provide us with a quite interesting presentation. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks to you, Francesco. Good afternoon to everyone. Let's go to point 4. In this point, industry would like to introduce some concepts that will help to answer the question how to make effective the market surveillance. Industry would like to transmit to market surveillance authorities that we are open and ready to help. European Regulation 2019-1020 established rules and procedures for market surveillance and compliance of products. According to Article 3, market surveillance means the activities carried out and measures taken by market surveillance authorities to ensure that product meets the requirement established by the European Union. It will offer market protection against products introduced from outside the European Union and internal market. Market surveillance authorities means the authority designated by a member state, according to Article 10, are responsible for carrying out market surveillance in its territory. This regulation provides a framework for the market surveillance to ensure that those products fulfill requirements providing a high level of protection of public interest, such as health and safety, the protection of consumers, protection of environment, and security. The market surveillance is not organized at Central European Union level. It's organized at local level by each single member state. Market surveillance shall include inspection of the documentation provided by the supplier, physical and website documentation, and the one uploaded to EPREL, and product evaluation to verify the declared values. The verification tolerances set out in Annex 9 of Energy Labelling Directive relate only to the verification of the declared parameters by the market surveillance authorities and shall not be used by the suppliers as an allowed tolerance to establish the values in the technical documentation. As you know, according to customer needs, the commercial refrigerated display cabinets are fully customizable. Many different specifications, options, and accessories that can affect to energy efficiency index. Manufacturers shall ensure that the parameters of the product information sheet set out in Annex 5 of the Energy Labelling Directive and the content of the technical documentation set out in Annex 6 are entered into EPREL database. Efforts in terms of internal data management and in terms of IT infrastructure is significant. At this point, industry would like to propose the concept cluster approach. What cluster means? A set of cabinets identified as one model for the purpose of eco-design and energy labeling and EPREL. Manufacturers might want to group different models into one model, which is representative of the highest energy efficiency index, the worst case of the listed family. It's the manufacturer's decision if and how to use the cluster approach. Market surveillance authorities can access EPREL data related to the model and make use of them for accessing the product under evaluation. Reasons to use the cluster approach: for benefit the repeatability, decrease the number of potential different models to easy comparison. We must get used to compare products according to its life cycle cost, not only due to the initial cost. Energy efficiency index will help. Eurovent interpretation presents a cluster proposal. Ines explained it before. Reference model, standard configuration for testing and declaration. Now, one suggestion from Eurovent to market surveillance. If a verification test has to be carried out due to a complaint or due to market surveillance on initiative, which product should be tested? Industry suggestion is 2.5 meter length or the closest length cabinet. The reasons we propose these suggestions are: 2.5 meters is by far the most common module. Industry carry out the test according to 23,953 standard. There was an agreement in the past on Eurovent to develop laboratories for 2.5 meter length cabinets. So there are no test capabilities available to carry out tests according to relevant standard for cabinets length more than 2.5 meters. Finally, as Ines explained it us before about extrapolation rules, the energy efficiency index of a cabinet having its length different from 2.5 meters can be assumed as equal to energy efficiency index of the same cabinet of a length of 2.5 meters. Let's go to point 5. In this point, we will introduce industry position about incomplete deliveries and how to deal with them. Some background to start. Placing on the market means making a product available for the first time on the European market. Refrigerating display cabinets placed on the European market must meet the eco-design requirements and are subjected to the CE Declaration of Conformity according to Article 3 of the Ecodesign Directive 2009/125 EC. Manufacturers' product documentation, EPREL declaration, energy label, CE declaration, sales orders, and associated invoices must relate to a specific product as it is placed on the market. Important, as it is placed on the market. All this documentation related by the model identifier shall include all the components and accessories influencing the energy efficiency index of the specific unit at the time of placing on the market. There are two possibilities to place products on the European market. Option first, the manufacturer provides the finished product ex works at its own factory on the ramp of its warehouse. And option 2, manufacturer is responsible for the product itself, the delivery, downloading, unpacking, finish assembling, including the energy efficiency relevant accessories, the installation and the commissioning. The time of placing products on the market is the handover to the customer at the end of the commissioning process. Absolute precondition is that the manufacturer doesn't make the product available to his customer prior to that. Industry conclusions are: it's not possible to place on the market products which could meet the minimum requirements only in a later stage. Only the manufacturers on refrigerating appliances with direct sales functions can be responsible for their conformity with the Ecodesign and Energy Labeling directives. Take into account that Ecolabel Directive defines in Article 3 obligation of manufacturers, generate and transmit requirements concerning product declaration. It also defines in Article 4 obligation of dealers and in Article 5 obligation of internet hosting platforms that are ensure the transmission of information provided by manufacturers. If one dealer transforms a cabinet and generates information concerning product declaration, it becomes a manufacturer. Thank you very much for your attention, and I leave the floor to Francesco.
Daniel, thanks a lot for your part, for your speech. Very, very important what you stress concerning the cooperation between the industry and the market surveillance authorities, and also what you clarified in terms of incomplete deliveries. So now it's time to start our Q&A session. So I would like to invite all our panelists to turn on their camera and the micro. And we already received several questions. I will go through some of them, share with the panelists, or take some also for myself. So first question, which is something that I would like to take for myself, how the European manufacturers are approaching the D-Day, so concerning awareness and readiness. I can tell that the European manufacturers are working together since 2005 concerning these eco-design and energy labeling regulations. The European manufacturers has supported both the European Commission and the several consultants which followed in the past. And finally, altogether, we have worked on the Eurovent recommendation. So right now, the industry was waiting for these regulations. So the industry has already put in place a lot of efforts in order to have products quite innovative and products able to meet the requirements. It's a huge effort, but I can say that the industry is getting there, and I would not be surprised if at the time of the future review, the top classes supposed to be empty will be at least a bit populated. Okay, then another question. So can remote CO2 counters be tested also with a different kind of refrigerant? I don't know who want to take this question, maybe Francesco?
Well, the regulation says that, of course, we have to produce labels and register products in EPREL no matter what the refrigerant is. So each product with its own refrigerant needs to be either tested, or however, there has to be a calculation to report in the EPREL and in the label the performances of this product, no matter what the refrigerant is. So CO2 products as well as HFC products or hydrocarbon products, there's no exception on that. All of these products, if included by the regulation, need to be labeled and registered in EPREL.
Okay, very clear, Francesco, thanks. Another quite important question. Which documentation importers and dealers should upload on EPREL? I don't know, Francesco, Pierluigi, Ines?
Documentation is specified in an annex of energy labeling regulation. So Article 3, Annex 4 and 5. And mainly are the technical data sheet of the cabinet with all information of type of family of the cabinet, the level of product temperatures, total display area, all information that are part of the label, and technical information related to the possibility to understand the reason and the explanation how the manufacturer achieve the value of energy efficiency index. So necessary to check from the authorities the explanation of this documentation. But everything is clear and transparent in the regulation.
Okay, Pierluigi, thanks a lot. Another question, maybe Daniel, you can answer it because it was part of your presentation. Can a cabinet be placed, if a cabinet is placed on the market, if then can be modified later on, what will happen to the energy efficiency index?
Okay, if one cabinet can be one cabinet modified, yes, why not? But you need to take into account that any configuration, component, or accessories that influence the relevant technical characteristics, the energy efficiency index, temperature class, N1, N2, or whatever, defines a new product according to Ecolabel and Ecodesign directives. So manufacturers will declare the product as it is placed on the market, and if someone modified it after it was placed on the market, is another product according to Ecolabel and Ecodesign directives, a new declaration have to be done.
Okay, thanks Daniel. And another question, what are the requirements for where the energy labeling should be placed on the refrigeration equipment? Is it mandatory to present, to show the energy labeling in store? Ines, do you want to take it?
Well, the label has to be shown everywhere where the manufacturer offer the cabinet on fairs and the point of sale of the cabinets, but not in the supermarket. It's up to the supermarket owners if they want to show the label.
Okay, thanks, very clear. Then another question, will the amend extending to 3M0 come into play before March 1st? I take it, according to the information Eurovent got from the European Commission, the amendment is going through a kind of a fast track. So it is supposed to be finalized and published by the end of February, unless there would be some delay. So yes, by 1st March, everything should be in place also concerning the product temperature class M0. If not 1st March, it would be right after.
Anyway, sorry, Francesco, I believe that the manufacturer already use the amendment values of 3M0 for qualifying product in this class. So in EPREL will be loaded also cabinets with this performance.
Okay, another question. Maybe Felix, you want to take it? This question is, what happens if a product tested during a market surveillance test deviates from the energy labeling, so from the data declared, beyond the allowed tolerance?
What will happen in that case is that the manufacturer or the retailer will be asked whether, first of all, they agree to the conclusions. If not, they will have the opportunity to have a second test to check whether the first test was correct or not. And in the worst case, there is also the possibility for a third test. How easy this will go is difficult to say, because display cabinets tend to be in size quite important, 2.5 meters as a standard length, and therefore the testing of equipment might not always take place. But there is the possibility to contradict the conclusions of a market surveillance authority, but it will involve a lot of effort.
Okay, thanks, Felix, very clear. Another question, I think that you can also take this one, Felix, is if there are any European dates, guidelines for the application of circular economy to products, and if the life cycle assessment is to be included.
At this moment, there are not yet formal guidelines for circular economy aspects. The Commission has instructed the standardization body SEN to develop a set of standards. They have been published last year, and they will be included in the revision of the methodology for eco-design and energy labeling. But that is ongoing at the moment, so that will take some time. So probably it will be introduced somewhere after 2023, and it will be part of something that is called the so-called Sustainable Products Initiative.
Okay, thanks. An additional question concerning the product temperature class 3M0. So whether it's already included or not from March 1st. Okay, I repeat myself. The product temperature class has been introduced in the Omnibus Ecodesign and Energy Labelling amendment covering the regulations of the products regulation published in 2019. Right now, it has not. This amendment has been was not published. Is not published. So right now, according to the info we have, 1st March, the product temperature class 3M0 is not in place. It's quite reasonable to consider that the publication of this amendment will take place by the end of February, and the product temperature class 3M0 will be in place. But right now, it is not. Other questions? A lot of questions. Extremely interesting. What happened to a product that has been produced prior to the 1st March and it's in storage after 1st March? Does it need a label? Francesco, do you want to take it?
Okay. The obligation of energy labeling and EPREL declaration is referred to the products which are placed in the market, in the European market, starting from March 1st this year. So all products which are sold and placed for the first time after 1st March require the label and the EPREL declaration. In some cases, products that have been produced earlier are in the stock of the manufacturer, and in this case, if the manufacturer sells these products after 1st March, he has the obligation to label them and declare the product in EPREL. In some cases, these products which have been produced earlier than 1st March have already been sold to dealers who have them in their warehouse, and they are expecting to sell them after 1st March. But in this case, the manufacturer has already introduced the product in the market before 1st March, so there is no obligation for the dealer to place the label and to declare in EPREL. So the obligation is starts when a product is placed for the first time after 1st March by the manufacturer, or of course the importer in the European market, or the authorized dealer and representative in Europe.
Okay, very clear. So as we stressed during the presentation, everything starts as soon as the product is placed on the market, according to the Ecodesign Directive and the related FAQ document. Another question, whether the Eurovent recommendation 14-6 is a legally binding document and how the market surveillance authorities can make use of the recommendation. I take it for me. So the Eurovent recommendation is not a legally binding document. It's the interpretation of the industry. With this document, the industry wants to provide this point of view and support the European Commission in drafting the future FAQ document accompanying both the Ecodesign and Energy Labeling regulation. What is in the recommendation is extremely correct, feasible from a technical point of view. So this document is not a legally binding document, but what is presented there is absolutely correct from a technical point of view. So I don't see any problem in having the market surveillance authorities making use of our document. But again, our final aim is to provide the input to the FAQ document from the European Commission.
Francesco, if you allow me, the guidance document that the Commission is going to prepare and its frequently asked questions are also legally non-binding documents.
Correct.
So every interpretation of a European legislation is at the end of the day open to the court. The guidance documents, whether they're being provided by industry, in this case Eurovent, as a Eurovent recommendation, are basically considered as state of the art and can be used as basic reference if ever it ends up into court. Same goes for the to be published guidance documents from the European Commission. to which Eurovent, so the speakers and Francesco and the other people in the product group of Eurovent are cooperating towards, it's just the same. It's just helping to make it as clear as possible to anyone dealing with refrigerated display cabinets, whether it's the manufacturer or the customer, a retailer, a shop, or whatsoever.
Okay, thanks, Felix. Another question, Pierluigi. What happens if a cabinet is tested and is placed on the market with a clear energy efficiency index, and then later on there is an update of these products? So if this cabinet has to be retested and redeclared on EPREL?
No, the cabinet, if is updated, what means updated will be modified in some components that affect its efficiency. Of course, the cabinet shall be registered another time, so it's another model in the purpose of EPREL definition, and so has to be retested from or depending by if it's a derivative model from another one and the modification are easy extrapolable with following the rules of our guide, could be not tested, just only evaluated and registered as a new model. Otherwise, shall be tested again.
Okay. And another question, can a manufacturer define its own calculation method to estimate the energy consumption of the cabinet, which belong to a cluster? Ines, you want to take it?
In the end, the declaration of the energy consumption is always in the responsibility of the manufacturer. So the Eurovent recommendation gives our view and our guideline for that, but of course, the manufacturer can select a different way, but then also to provide evidence for the method used.
Okay. Another question, what happens to products that do not reach the H class? So the fruit and vegetable class.
I think they should not be allowed on the market. So anything below H is basically not allowed on the European market and cannot be put on the European market.
Okay, if a new accessory is used to display goods in a cabinet, initiated by the end customer, who is responsible for the new label? Again, I try to re-stress what has been presented by Daniel. We have two options. When the product is delivered at the ramp of a factory, one other option when the cabinet is installed and finalized in commissioning phase in a supermarket. The cabinet should meet the minimum requirement at both one of these two phases. So when there is a retrofit, a new option in a cabinet already installed, this is not placing on the market the cabinet for the first time. So every kind of a future retrofitting could be allowed. It is not the case when a cabinet is delivered as first time and placed on the market. Question, if we know if the market surveillance structure is already organized in some country, and if yes, how this structure works, and an additional question, which is the market surveillance authority in Italy. Francesco, do you want to take it?
Just introduction, the market surveillance authorities are organized in each country. European Commission keeps a list of it, and there are 25 to 30 different product groups, and Ecodesign is a product group number 23, for which each country has its own administration that has to take care of it. So the overall initial contact can be found on the website of the European Commission, and I think that one of our Italian colleagues, Francesco Mastrapasqua, can detail it for Italy. I think it starts from either the Ministry of Economic Affairs or the Ministry of the Environment.
Yeah, In Italy, it is the responsibility for market surveillance on eco-design and energy labeling is in the hands of the Ministry of Environment, which has its own organization and branches. One of the branches is ENEA, which has this is in the scope of to be a practical market surveillance authority for our products. And of course, it can be ENEA, or it can also be the local chambers of commerce that initiate market surveillance activities, and both of them. Of course, open in the future to appoint other bodies to do market surveillance in Italy. This is also in the hands of the ministry, so they can do it. And they can initiate also dedicated projects of market surveillance, so they can assign budgets for market surveillance and give this budget also to other bodies or other organizations. At present, ENEA and the Chambers of Commerce are the main ones for market surveillance in Italy.
Okay, and yes, Felix?
It might also interest the participants that the member states, they publish their market surveillance program each year. So you can find on the website of the European Commission the overview of the actions a member state intends to do during the year. It often also includes how many people and how much money is allocated to these activities.
Okay, thanks. Another question, if the energy consumption of the refrigeration pack is included in the requirement, or how it fits in the coefficient P. Ines, Pierluigi, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, is the pack. Okay, Ines.
No, Pierluigi, take it.
No, okay, but the reference depend how the really there is no any evaluation of the pack of the compressor or anything directly in the value of AAE coefficient. The standard, the testing standard method specify which is the system calculation of direct energy consumption of the cabinet, and there is a part of a refrigeration energy consumption that take into account theoretically also the refrigerating system. I say theoretically because this is a simplification of the calculation, and then is a standard that we follow because any kind of efficiency value is based on this standard. So this is the method that all manufacturers follow for identify the value of the efficiency of the product.
Okay. Daniel, an additional question concerning the set of extrapolations and the cluster approach. How the different configurations are handled, and if each single configuration needs its own label.
As we explained it before, one cluster is one set of product identified as one model for the purpose of Ecodesign and Energy Labeling and EPREL. And they will be grouped in different models, or different models will be grouped into one model that is representative of the highest energy efficiency index. So it's the worst case.
Correct. So the manufacturer does not need to provide the product with a label per configuration, but this is the added value of the cluster approach. Additional question, if the EPREL portal is already open to final customer for consultation. Felix?
At the moment, it is not yet open for our type of products. The Commission had indicated it would be open at the end of last year, but to our knowledge, it's not yet open for the final customer today.
Okay, another question, what happens to product manufactured in Europe but supposed to be sold in other countries like Ukraine, Moldavia, and so on.
For
Francesco?
Sorry, once again, please.
What happens to products produced, manufactured in Europe, but supposed to be sold outside of Europe? The question was referring to Ukraine and Moldavia.
This is a good question because all in all, during our presentation, we have spoken about the obligation restricted to the European market. But there is some kind of also integration in the concept of the CE declaration. So the CE declaration requires that the product is compliant with all directives and regulations in Europe. So there is also a possibility that if a country requires the CE declaration for a product to be imported in that country, automatically it has also to fulfill the obligations of the Ecodesign and Energy Labeling requirements. That means that this obligation in practice is not only restricted to the European countries, but also to other countries that may require the CE declaration for import.
Okay, it brings me... Okay, sorry, Felix.
And in the case of Ukraine, it's useful to note that Ukraine is copying or transposing practically all the European eco-design regulations in their own national legislation. So if you conform to the European requirements for Ukraine, things should go quite easily.
Okay, and it brings also to another question. What about energy labeling and the eco-design regulation concerning the CE declaration? Okay, the CE declaration, it is not mandatory to put there any reference to the energy labeling. It's mandatory to clarify all the requirements related to eco-design. Other question. Who is responsible concerning the recycling and recovery of the components installed in the cabinet? Is that a responsibility of the manufacturer or of the end user?
This is a difficult question as to who has to deal with the end of life. Normally, at the moment, it is the person who is possessing the equipment at the end of life. In future, in the concept of the Sustainable Products Initiative, it will also come back to the manufacturer. A little bit like it is the case for household goods at the moment. For example, you buy a refrigerator from a brand A. When you want to replace it after 10 years with another refrigerator, you buy one, let's say, from a brand D or E. At that moment, the manufacturer or the retailer of brand D or E has to take back also your equipment, your refrigerator, which was of brand A at the beginning. This at the moment is not yet fully in place for refrigerator display cabinets. It is expected also to come in force with time.
Okay, thanks. Another question related how to round the declared highest temperature. So in this question, what happens if a cabinet is tested and is performing at 5.4 Celsius degree? Should it be rounded up to 5 on the energy label? So would this cabinet be working according to the 3M1 class? Pierluigi, Francesco?
Yeah, I don't understand well the question. If the cabinet perform at 5 is M1 class, is performing 4 is M0, if performing 7 is M2.
No, sorry, if the cabinet is performing at 5.4, which temperature class does apply?
At the moment is class M2. The new standard, the standard under revision as a point that round the value. So if is 5.4 is considered 5, is 5.5 is considered 6. So the round of temperature will be a new the new edition of the standard. At the moment is not rounded, so we have to consider the upper values, I believe.
I think the rounding declared in the new standard is just an explanation what is already the rule today, because the temperature class is just given as an integer, so that it's always rounded to the nearest integer.
Yes, yes. Other question, what happens to a cabinet that is a multi-temperature cabinet? So maybe it's a chiller as well as a freezer. So it's a L1 and M0 cabinet. So how to declare this cabinet? If I'm not mistaken, in the energy label, it's possible to declare multi-temperature cabinet. So each compartment could be labeled separately to the other.
The question, Francesco, is on multi-compartment products or products which can be switched from a temperature to another?
No, multi-compartment. Then there is a question which is a tricky question. What about manufacturers that are not able to perform tests? So they are not able to declare the performance of a cabinet. Okay, I take this question. Yes, it's a tricky question, but what is important to understand is that the manufacturer must be able must ensure that the cabinet is performing and is meeting the minimum requirements. It means that yes, manufacturers has to test this cabinet is a product or must be able to derive the efficiency index of his product from another one that maybe has been tested into separate laboratory. Has been tested in another. Sorry.
Francesco, I believe that in that case, a manufacturer should make use of an outside laboratory. There are independent test houses in the preparation for the study on these products. As Eurovent, with the support of all our manufacturers, we have provided input of the test data of about 2,500 products. So it is feasible to do it either in-house if you have it, or outside. There are quite a number of laboratories that can do the test. Of course, it's a little bit more complicated, but it functions, and it can also be used for verification purposes by the market surveillance authorities.
Okay. Another question, what happens if a manufacturer delivers a product and while delivering its products, it's also providing the energy label within the instruction manual and so on, and then the provided energy label is thrown away and is not present anymore within the product?
I believe the easiest thing is to refer to the obligation of the manufacturer to eventually reprint another label and deliver it to the client. Of course, these things may happen in some cases, but anyway, the obligation for the manufacturer is, when this happens, to print a new one and deliver it promptly on request.
And then a delivered product the model can also be derived from what has been declared and listed on EPREL.
Yeah, I'm referring to the case when the energy label goes lost during the transport. Yeah. I would say in this case, the easy solution is to provide a new one immediately on request to the customer and address this problem this way. And however, it's the right of the client to have any time upon request the energy label of its product.
additional question: what happens to manufacturer not coming from Europe but that wants to have market in Europe? Do they have to follow the requirements? What if they are not able to provide the spare parts according to the defined required time?
Difficult to assess at the second part of the question. So the first part is quite simple. If you want to place a product on the European market, it must comply with the European requirements. Spare parts, I think they should be available for 8 years. So the nominated responsible importer should be able to demonstrate that these are available. If not, it's a problem if after 4 or 5 years a retailer asks for a spare part and he cannot provide it. Then it is his responsibility of having put the product on the market to try to deal with it.
Other question: what about concerning testing environment and the climatic rooms? If the climatic rooms, the testing rooms, are to be certified, can be directly assessed by the manufacturer, or if no certification or declaration is needed, again concerning the test environment. So the requirement in
Francesco, for companies, test houses, either in-house or independent test house, they have to comply with the requirements in the standard that set out how the test has to be performed. And normally those laboratories should be accredited for this activity. If they are accredited, it should be fine. If they are not accredited, it depends on partly the appreciation, if there is a verification by a market surveillance authority, partly on the way the Commission is looking at it. But normally, all reputable manufacturers do have a decent laboratory that functions according to the set rules. I think Ines can, or Francesco can confirm this.
Yes, I think most of the manufacturers have rooms that comply with the standard. Normally this the third party, but of course, if in terms of market surveillance, we can provide evidence that our rooms are complying with the standard.
Okay, a couple of more questions. So to clarify again what place on the market means. Daniel, do you want to take it?
Place on the market, as we talked before, means making a product available for the first time on the European market.
Perfect. And then the same question continues by asking: is it when is this placed on the market? Is it when a cabinet is sold or when is delivered? Again, we get back to option 1 and option 2. But Daniel.
Yeah, there are 2 possibilities to place product on the European market. The option 1 is the manufacturer provides the finished product export at its own factory, as we told before, on the ramp of its warehouse. And the option 2 is manufacturer is responsible for the product itself, the delivery, downloading, and packaging, finished assembling, including the energy efficiency index, relevant accessories, the installation, and the commissioning. So the time of placing products on the market is the handover to the customer at the end of the commissioning process.
Correct, thanks. So another question, what will happen to UK according to the Brexit? So this is something that we are assessing internally. It looks like for concerning the UKCA, so the Declaration of Conformity for UK, until the end of 2021, European manufacturers can continue exporting by making use of the CE declaration. This will not be the same in 2022 when the UKCA will be mandatory. So this is almost the status of the art concerning the UK right after the deal took place at the end of last year. Other question: if a retailer is ordering several cabinets, do all these cabinets need to be labeled or just one?
Each one is a refrigerating appliance with a direct size function, and is falling into.
Is it the same also if the manufacturer is the retailer is ordering several cabinets belonging to the same model?
Each of the products need to be labeled, yes.
Okay. What happens to products that do not reach H class in CC3? So in the standard, in the test environment defined in the ISO 23953.
I think, Francesco, this is a tricky question, because the question is not
Ines?
to be refrigerated anymore.
Sorry,
can you
Ines,
hear me?
can you repeat, please?
Question. Because the question is, when is a cabinet still be chilled? So, so I'm not sure that really for me is a question that is not really solved.
Okay. Clear. Other questions? Okay. Okay, energy label, where is the QR code leading to?
The registration.
QR code.
The leading to the number of registration in EPREL. So directly refers to database and specific model registration.
Other question, is it okay when the energy label sticks only on the packaging of the unit? Francesco?
This is, of course, a possibility. It's compliant, but of course, the risk that this energy label gets lost is, of course, important. So it's not, although probably is not an infraction to the law, but it's not advisable to do that. So better to deliver the label or in the cabinet or in the package containing the technical documentation of the product, however, in a safe place, so to make sure that the label will not get lost during the transport. But this is a possibility for the issue of the cabinets which are already in the stock of a manufacturer with the packaging. Of course, if we have hundreds of cabinets in the stock which are already with packaging, it may result to be a problem for a manufacturer to unpack all the cabinets, put the label in, and then repack the product once again. So to avoid this as a transitional method, only strictly for this problem, it can be also compliant to the law to deliver the energy label on the packaging. But try to stick it safely so that it doesn't get lost.
Okay, I would say a couple of more questions and then we are almost at the end of our webinar. So how, if there is a product that has been designed and is reaching a certain energy efficiency class, what will happen to the same product after its redesign phase and when you get a new efficiency class? I would say it's a new product.
It's a new product.
Yeah.
It's a new product, so a new declaration have to be done.
Yes, a new entry on EPREL.
Yes.
Another question, which is more comment than a question. If the market surveillance is organized at the local level, is there a risk that there might not be a uniform approach?
There should not be a difference in the approach. So the market surveillance authorities, all of them across Europe, have to follow the same approach, the same rules. So the approach would be the same if a product is tested, it is tested to the same standards. So that issue should not be a problem. The one thing that one could note is that the market surveillance authorities are very likely to share their information across Europe. So that if you're tested, let's say, in the Netherlands, the information will also go to Poland or any of the other 27 member states.
Okay. Another question, what is meant by the regulation when it refers to equivalent models? Who declares what is equivalent? Ines, do you want to take it?
Yeah, equivalent model means here strictly the same cabinet with the same technical features, same energy consumption, maybe just sold under a different brand name.
Okay,
that should
very
not
clear.
be confused with our concept of reference cabinet.
Indeed, indeed. I would terminate with this last question, which looks at the future. So, what will happen to Ecodesign from 2023? Only tighter restrictions or something more?
Tighter restrictions is one possibility, but as Francesco Mastrapasqua has indicated, the circular economy aspects will be introduced. So when the regulations are revised, the issues of material efficiency, how to deal with the end of life, which type of components to use, that will get far more attention. The objective there is to make sure that the products will have not only a better energy efficiency, but also a better overall life cycle performance. So that is to come on stream, but I expect that is with the revision somewhere after 2023, most likely around 2025 for this type of products.
I think that the Eurovent PGRDC will deal with this issue as soon as the revision will start. Okay, so now I would like to thank you everybody for attending this webinar, and I leave the floor to Felix Van Eyken for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Francesco. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers. Ines Muehlhaus, Francesco Mastrapasqua, Pierluigi Schiesaro, Daniel Antoñanzas, and of course also the moderator, Francesco Scuderi, plus the people behind the screen. I would also like to thank all the participants, all the companies that participate in the product group Eurovent refrigerator display cabinets. They have been following this regulation since its inception in 2005. As we indicated, a lot of effort has gone into this by the industry, including testing 2,600 appliances. The recommendations that the product group has made is freely available on our website. So you're welcome to download it, comment on it, and if you have got other questions, also ask these questions to us. So thanks very much both to all the members and their companies. I would also like to thank the attendees of this webinar, both the manufacturers and their customers who have been very numerous to attend today. I trust that the information will provide them an easy transition when they meet the requirements on the 1st of March. So don't be afraid if you are a customer that you do not see products in the Class A or Class B. That was the intention of the European Commission to start with empty classes. So you will see with time better products coming onto the market in these classes, but most likely not yet immediately after the 1st of March. So thank you for attending. I hope that you will have got a good insight into the new requirements, that this allows you to be on equal terms between customer and supplier of the equipment. If there are any other questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with the secretary of Eurovent. It's on the screen. We will also provide the recording of this webinar on the social media, so you can find it there. And we will also provide an answer to all the questions that have been raised during the meeting. If you've got other questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Once more, thanks to all of you. And like that, we can close the webinar just on time. Thank you very much, and goodbye, and hear you later.